All right, let's dive right into the function of the gut microbiome. This is one of my favorite topics to teach my patient and really just to talk about in general. And before we can answer the question of what is the microbiome, we want to really look at what is the human body. So the human body is actually a holobiont, which is a super organism made up of more microbial cells than human cells. And the microbiome, so this is referring to your gut microbiome because you also have the skin microbiome, you have the vaginal microbiome, the mouth microbiome, and lung microbiome, right? These are just like areas where we have other organisms that live there that help us with the function that is specific for that organ. Now, the the microbiome is actually a network of organisms that reside in our gut. And what we think when we think of the gut microbiome, we think of just the bacteria that live there. But there are also viruses, fungus, yeast, and often what's not mentioned is parasites. They live there too. And so a little bit of context in the gut microbiome is that currently in modern time, in modern human, pretty much started since the early 1900s, especially after World War II, where antibiotic was invented. We each, in general, the population has between 100 to 400 different strains of bacteria residing in our gut microbiome. Now, if you compare that to human beings that are our ancestors that lived hundreds of years ago or even thousands of years ago, they had between 1,000 to 4,000 different strains of bacteria living in the gut. Now that we have lost 90% of our gut diversity of the different strains of bacteria that we have. Now, in addition to that, our microbiome has also been impacted by environmental toxins. So what's really fascinating is that before the 2012, before we completed the Human Genome Project, we thought that our genes dictate diseases. It's going to dictate what diseases we have. If our parents had diabetes or high blood pressure, we would end up having that those same condition. However, when we finished the Human Genome Project, we learned that we only have about 20,000 different genes, which coded for more than 1 million different proteins that is produced in the human body. So that was when we started to really, well, first we got really disrupted in our thinking about how genetics cause diseases. But now, along with all the research that we were starting to do with the gut microbiome, we saw that, oh, we actually are outnumbered, our cells, human cells are outnumbered by microbial cells in the gut by 10 to 1. Meaning for every one human cell, we have 10 different bacterial cells. And that is why they actually collectively have an impact on our digestion, our ability to extract nutrients, but they also produce some of the nutrients in our gut that we just cannot get from our diet, right? And that's why they are so important to us, because some of these bacteria, they convert fiber that we consume into short chain fatty acids, also known as postbiotics. And this is how they have so much power over us. They also produce chemical compounds and waste products that can also cause disease. This is what you know of the bad population. So think of the gut as the control center of your entire body, because as we go along into the later modules, you're going to learn there's a gut-brain connection, gut detox liver connection, and gut and hormone connection, and it affects our metabolism. So that's why they are the control center of our entire body and overall health. So think of it as the CEO of your health, managing from everything from immunity to brain function. And there are key microbiome functions, including immune system development and regulation, which I'm going to go over in a little bit, nutrient and absorption and metabolism, hormone regulation, including digestive hormones that we produce, thyroid hormones, sex hormones, and metabolic hormones. They also have an impact on our ability to detox, our liver health, our lymphatic system, our gut, our organs and tissues, and they definitely have a major effect on our neurological function and our brain health, right? And so to really look at and understand the function of the gut microbiome a little bit more, you want to see how the microbiome was even developed in the first place. So our microbiome actually starts from our mom. So if our mom has a gut microbiome that is dysfunctional, guess what? We pretty much are born with what she was dealing with. Now, there are many factors that affect our gut microbiome, one of which is modern lifestyle, just the food that we eat and how we eat, when we eat, and all the chemicals we're putting into our food. So it's how food is grown, how food is processed. That has a major impact on our gut microbiome development. And then there's antibiotic use. So antibiotics was really becoming a big thing like after World War II when we developed penicillin. That was the first antibiotic that accidentally got developed, and it saved a lot of lives. And at the time, we needed antibiotics. It actually was one of the biggest factor in reducing infectious disease or preventable illnesses, and it saved millions of people. However, because of that process and how we've basically overused antibiotics, in other countries, in Asian countries especially, you just get antibiotics whenever you need, and you can get it off of the street. Literally, you just go to the store and you'll be able to get it. Medical doctors in the US prescribe it pretty much for any condition. You come in for something, they'll give you an antibiotic. So just the overuse of antibiotics has really driven the decline of our microbiome diversity. Now, C-section, so when you are born vaginally, that process of passing through your mother's birth canal, you get exposed to all the bacteria that are there. That will then stimulate our immune system to become active. That's the first time your system interact with the external environment. Now you're having these benign bacteria that triggers your immune system to be turned on, essentially. But what if that baby was born via C-section? Now, C-section has been on the rise in the past 20 years. Current time, we are now having 30% of all live births are done through C-section. And sometimes they're not even an emergency, and sometimes they are, but most of them are elective C-section. And the impact on the children that are born via C-section is that they never truly get a fully developed immune system. And what they grow up and deal with is a lot of eczema, asthma, autoimmune dysfunction, and they have a very high risk for developing autoimmune disease. And so all of these environmental factors, like how technology and drug development has really altered our gut microbiome. And it's important for you to understand this, because if you understand these are the risk factors, we can actually do something about it. Now, I think it's not really possible to rebuild our gut microbiome to the diversity that it used to be, but you can definitely maintain it and make it as optimal as possible. Because if you really look at the data, yes, we have less diversity. We're only living with 10% of what our ancestors have, but they don't deal with the problems that we deal with. And we now live longer because we have technology and drugs. So in a way, the development of modern society allows us to live longer, but the challenge is most of us will be living longer with a lot of chronic dysfunctions, chronic symptoms, and chronic disease diagnosis, and require us to be on medication long-term. And then when we get really sick, we use machine to help us. And I think most of the people that I've talked to and worked with, they don't want that. I mean, I don't want that, and I don't think you want that. So that's why it's important that we educate ourselves so that we can do our best to not only manage our microbiome, but also our family's microbiome, our children's microbiome. And as we spread this knowledge, we are going to be able to help our community, and then we will be able to make a real impact on healthcare and reduce the cost of healthcare that we're spending in this country as well. Okay, so the function of the gut microbiome goes beyond what we think is just, it helps us with nutrient extraction. So a lot of the plant-based food that we consume, we actually can't break them all down. It's when those food gets into our gut, like microbiome, which is mostly in the colon, that is where these microbes will start to break these fiber down and convert them into fat, short chain fatty acids. And then these short chain fatty acids will go on and help energize the cells in the gut. So unlike other cells in the body, the colonic cells, the enterocyte cells in the gut, they don't utilize glucose or fat to get energy. They actually use short chain fatty acids as energy. So when you don't produce a lot of these short chain fatty acids, guess what? Your cells in the gut are starving and they can't repair themselves and they don't function. And then after a while, you're going to start to see dysfunction in the gut because you don't have the nutrients that are critical for the function. And this is why having a high fiber plant-based diet is really important. And the modern standard American diet has really stripped us away from eating natural food that feeds our microbiome. And now we're eating junk food. And these junk food, not only do they not produce key nutrients for us, but they also cause a lot of toxins to be released because there are bacteria that would feed on these junk food and feed on meat. However, when you ferment, when the bacteria, when they collectively are breaking down sugar, meat, junk food, they produce a lot of toxic waste. So the short chain fatty acids, to me, how I see it is that they're good bacteria poop. And then you have bad bacteria feeding on bad food, and then they produce poop that is bad for you, that causes inflammation, that causes damage to your gut lining, and it causes chronic inflammation, which is the silent driver of diseases. So in this picture here, I just want to demonstrate how your nutrition and lifestyle have a huge impact on the gut microbiome, from your digestion to your microbiome. Like these food, I don't know if you've seen some of the videos where they try to burn like Big Mac and Oreo cookies, and you can't burn them. You cannot destroy them. And they don't get broken down. Well, guess what? They don't get broken down properly in our system either. So when we consume these food, they stay, and then very toxic, but they stay in our system, and then they get absorbed into our systemic system, causing a rise in your toxic burden, which is every toxin that you have ever been exposed to since you were conceived in your mother's womb, minus your own capacity to detox. So this toxic burden, you're going to hear me talk about this a lot because it is very important that you understand this concept, because this is the root cause of all diseases. It's not just one thing. It's not just two things. It's multiple things that you've been exposed to throughout your life. And then you experience a big stressor in your life. And that stressor is that last straw for your body, and your body say, I can't deal with this anymore. And that's when you start to really see a decline in your bodily function. And it may manifest as bloating, right? Abdominal pain, fatigue, brain fog, and then you can have sleep issues. All those things are a function of what's going on in your gut. So I talked about the short chain fatty acid production. Now, the effect of chronic inflammation that you will see is that they cause a lot of dysfunction. Like I said, the digestive function, diabetes, arthritis, cardiovascular disease, right? And then they also have a big impact on your brain, which then leads to anxiety, depression, and all the things that's going on in your gut increases your risk of Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease. And that's why it is important for you to take care of your gut microbiome, but also your digestive function. So how are we going to build a resilient microbiome and a functional gut so that you can have a healthy life, free of diseases, and also be able to reverse any symptoms or medical diagnosis that you've been given? And so this is the 5 pillars that we are going to look at in this program that's going to help you build a resilient microbiome. And you can incorporate different elements from these pillars to create a cumulative and synergistic effect. And this is and in the next few modules, you're going to learn how to eat well to feel well. And in module 2, you will adopt a reset elimination diet that is temporary. It's not something that you're going to do forever, but the intention of the reset elimination diet is for you to really discover your relationship to food, how food impacts you, what kind of symptoms you have when you eat certain food. And there's a process for you to go through in order for you to achieve this awareness. But the diet itself will help you reduce inflammation and symptoms, and it's only 4 weeks long. And that's why we're doing it together. The beauty of this is like once you do it with a group, you have support. It can be fun. You can make it fun. And you kind of have to in order to make it more manageable. And if you have someone to do it with, that would definitely be easier for you. And for those of you who are married, I always suggest to my patient, enroll your partner into doing this with you and just get and ask them to do it for you because this is important to you. And most of the time, your partner will say yes. And it's just 4 weeks of you guys adopting this. And it's a new year. You can use this to help you detox the from all the food that you've consumed over the holidays. So this is also a good detox food plan that you could use food as medicine for. And so you will also learn to adopt lifestyle that help you build your health and your microbiome. You're going to learn strategies to manage stress effectively, and you will learn how to reduce your toxic burden to maintain your results and to optimize your health. And lastly, you're going to learn how to use targeted supplementation to help you with the whole process. And I believe that because of what's going on in the food industry, how food are grown, we're just not getting enough nutrients from the food that we eat anymore. All the minerals are depleted from the soil. So unless you're eating food from a regenerative farm, which is what I try to do, but it gets expensive, it gets pretty hard to find some of the food you want because it's not always readily available, especially if you're an ethnic group like myself. You can't find like organic food or regenerative farms food with some of the vegetables that we eat in our Asian cuisine. So that's why supplementation come in, and you don't have to use them all the time, but you definitely want to learn about their function and how you can use them to support you in your health journey. And now I will see you in the next section.